Welcome to Around the Lens, Episode 6. Around the Lens is a weekly visual journalism roundtable podcast where 3, 4, maybe even 5 visual journalists gather to discuss the news of the week related to our career field. We're recording this 21 December 2015 at about 8:30 p.m. or so here on the East Coast. I'm your host, David J. Murphy, a visual journalist with about 15 years experience in the field, currently based out of Charleston, South Carolina.
And I am Zach Roberts, your co-host, and I am a photojournalist and video editor based out of New York.
Thanks, Zach. Our panelist this week is Eros Hoagland. Eros, I'll let you introduce yourself to the audience.
Hello, I'm Eros Hoagland, a photographer, videographer, cinematographer, all-around camera guy, I suppose. I've been working, probably about almost 20 years now, primarily doing photojournalism, now kind of edging my way into narrative cinematography.
Great. And I know you have a lot of stuff, a lot of experience. Eros, has been doing war photography, documenting in Southern America, Latin America, all kinds of stuff going on there. And, we're going to talk to Eros specifically about some topics tonight. In fact, the first topic of the show this evening relates directly to Eros. Now, excuse me, if you listened last week, one of our topics discussed basically what Eros had said in an event, in an article, basically one of his pieces about him, where he basically kind of said that, photojournalism wasn't important as a job. So normally I don't bring up topics from previous shows unless they're relevant, and this week they're really relevant because, again, we have the man who said the words. So we're going to start by basically grilling Eros and finding out why he said what he said. What's going on? Where are these sort of thoughts behind the words? And let me just kind of reiterate what he said, some of the quotes. And Eros, let me know if I'm getting this wrong. But you said, "I don't believe that photojournalism is a very important job. My pictures and the pictures of my colleagues don't really change anything. So let's not pretend like they do. You want to help people become a doctor and work in some poor neighborhood where people can't afford health care. That's how you help people." So Eros, you've got a long legacy of photojournalism. Your father was a photojournalist. You've been covering, wars and I would say extremely important topics. So what's kind of like the impetus? What brought up these sort of ideas, and how do you sort of qualify what you're saying?
Well, I think that's something that I've been wrestling with for many years, kind of the importance of the work that we do specifically as war photographers. And I should have been more specific about that. I have to say that probably, looking back on it now, that's probably what I should have said in the interview, is that I'm having I'm wrestling with some serious thoughts around how important this work really is, or how much does it really contribute. Instead of just flat out saying that it wasn't an important job. Sure, there's a lot of value to it for sure, but I think that in certain segments of the photojournalist community, I think we kind of inflate the importance of not necessarily the work, but at least of ourselves, and that's something that's kind of been bothering me for quite some time. I think that a lot of people kind of use the not an excuse so much, but we like to say that we're trying to help better human situations on the earth by exposing various tragedies to the world. But honestly, I think that most of us are doing it because we like it, because it's fun. I started out pretty, and I say that with no sense of irony, because war. How can I say it any differently? Men like war. War wouldn't exist if we didn't like it. And there's something about kind of, I think, living through this childhood war fantasy that's really attractive to a lot of people that come from privilege. I mean, I definitely know. Gosh, it's a hard one. It's a really hard one. Suffice it to say that I think I think there is importance to it, but really at the end of the day, I don't really think it changes much at all. I don't think these are the agents of change that we claim that they are, and that's my problem.
So the imagery that that speaks volumes to kind of what we've done in the past. The imagery that always people bring up when they talk about war photography. I mean, you don't think that imagery has merit, or that it necessarily changed anything in the past when it was created? The shot of the guy being shot, I think during the Vietnam War, or the imagery from Desert Storm when you had the all the casualties on that one road. I mean, you don't think that had any influence, or more modern photojournalism, just based on our sort of oversaturated image internet type of society?
I'm sure it has. I'm sure it has some kind of influence, but I don't think not nearly as much that those in the photojournalistic community want to think it does. Meaning that, if one picture changes policy, I think we got a big problem on our hands, because the door for propaganda swings both ways. I mean, how is take the Syrian refugee crisis? How Britain's prime minister supposedly changed his mind on the refugee issue because of these photographs that were taken. Now, that can be a good thing, depending on your point of view, or that can be a bad thing. So, I mean, I have trouble believing that it was just these pictures that set this into motion. I mean, a lot of people will blame Judith Miller for giving the go-ahead to the Bush administration for launching the Iraq War, but they were going to do it anyways. I just don't think. I think that there's a lot more going on than just the pictures, and certainly the pictures add something to the whole conversation, but I just don't think as much as we think that they do. And when I'm talking about I'm talking about the people within the photojournalist community.
Do you think that has changed over the years? Do you think it's gotten more so now that we kind of have a lot more? I think there's a lot of like celebrity photojournalists, and it's always hard from looking from the inside out, seeing whether the people like Tim Hetherington, people that we really know names of and films have been made of now, whether they're kind of outside of our world celebrities. But do you think that's changed, say, from like 30 years ago, or is it, has it always been kind of like that for you, or at least your consideration, what you're seeing?
I mean, that's hard to answer because I wasn't really aware of much 30 years ago. What I do know is that within this kind of circle of celebrity photojournalism, there is so much ego, you can cut it with a knife. And, call me cynical, but I just think that so often the job is more about the photographer than it is about the pictures. And if it is about the pictures, it tends to be in the context of a competition with the other privileged photographers like myself. So, it's no accident that any place that's a big hot news ticket item is swarming with the same photographers that were at the last one. I mean, they all go to the same places. We all go to the same places.
So, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with celebrity photojournalists. I mean, I know a few photojournalists, like, I think Johnny L or something? Mikey L? I forget his name. You know what I'm talking about?
when we talk about celebrity photojournalists, we mean celebrities within the industry, people that are like kind of revered as the photojournalist gods of the industry. And that really doesn't exist outside the industry. It's like this little bubble that, oh yeah, so and so is, so and so's there. He's taking pictures down the way, whether it's Jim Noctware, Chris Anderson, or
Okay, got it.
It's so
Joe
there's
McNally.
like these kind of.
For me, if Scott Olsen's somewhere, that I'm not, I'm a little pissed usually. So
There you
yeah,
go.
I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah,
It's a competition. It's cliquish and it's a competition, and that's fine. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But there's a lot of self-importance out there, man, and it's really not about the pictures. Unless you look at it within the context of the competition about the pictures, because this is what happens, man. You go to a place that's blowing up in terms of a news story, and a bunch of Western photographers show up and they start running around in competition to see who can make the most dramatic pictures. It's a sport. That's what it's become, is a sport. And now I'm not saying there's not value to it, and I'm not saying that there are people who definitely believe what they're doing and believe, are more idealistic about it. But at the end of the day, it's a game. And at some point, it just kind of becomes too much. Like, how many cameras do you need somewhere?
yeah.
Well, I remember a shot that I saw from the Haiti earthquake where it's like, I don't know, looks like there's 30 photojournalists crowding around a hole in the ground because there's some Haitian earthquake victim like stuck there who's trying to like get out. And it's this picture that shows the huge mass of just photojournalists in one area. So maybe, is that what you're talking about? Like where we all kind of glom onto one story in the effort, like you said, to get the most award-winning dramatic shot? Like, it's not really about the subject.
Well, that's one version of it. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly one version of it. That definitely, that's an extreme kind of comical example. And I'm not saying that it's all like that at all. But, I remember when anything ever happened, say when Hurricane Katrina caused all its devastation, or the beginning of the Syrian conflict, all the other photographers or journalists I know, hey, are you going to Syria? As if it's a party, like, yeah, let's, that's the next place to go. Let's all go there, I have a lot, I understand you got to go where the news is, because that's what's going to, pay the bills. But it's problematic in a way too, because who decides what news is the important news? I mean, photojournalists have been covering Africa for decades, man, but nothing's changed there. Like, who are the victims and how do they matter to us? That's the part that there's no consistency, and that's my problem with it. If there's a child that's kind of dying or dead or something like that all of a sudden becomes a big deal, as if the life of all the adults didn't matter. Women are killed in Juarez in the 1990s, and that's this huge deal. Forget about that. There's been like 100 times as many men killed, because they didn't matter at that. What's politically convenient, and what news is going to be dictated as important by whom? I mean, for Christ's sakes, these the news agencies, magazines, stations, what are they owned by? Like 4 different companies? I mean, who's really dictating all this? So, I've got a lot more respect for the people that go and work in an area for many years and photograph it because they're personally invested in it. But in terms of bouncing around from one conflict zone to the next, man, it's sport, and that's that. And it's all about ego, and it's all about adventurism. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying, fess up, admit it. Everyone's like, no, I'm bettering mankind because I'm doing this. Like, no, come on.
I see. So what you're not so much. I get what you're saying now. So it's like, you get these people who are almost like bird watchers, like birders. They're going to different locations to get these photographs, to get these things, tick these boxes, sort of to say, collect their imagery, and then they get out of there. They don't care about the situation itself. They just want to get the shot and get out of there. And they're not people who...
I'm not saying they don't care. I'm not saying they don't care about the situation, but I think that your birdwatcher analogy is a good one. You know, it doesn't exclude you caring about it. I'm just saying, like, just be honest with it. Don't perpetuate this myth that we're somehow like these, you know, saintly monks that are out like serving mankind. You know, it just rubs you the wrong way. That's all. You know, just be honest.
I know the feeling. It's I mean, especially with a lot of the whether it be Black Lives Matter, the police shooting protests, or whatever. There's definitely a kind of collect them all.
Gotta catch them all.
I mean, I'm 100% guilty of it. I'm pissed that I missed going to Baltimore. And yeah, I don't know what, other than just I missed those images. I don't know why I'm pissed I missed that. I mean, I've been covering the protest movement for about a decade now. Whatever guise that's been is like Occupy Wall Street or whatever, but it's not. You know. I'm hoping it's for some larger cause, but it's also
you're interested.
I know what I'm doing.
You know, that's your thing. That's your running narrative, and I have total respect for that. You know, it's not like you're just jumping on the hottest news story just because it's going off.
But it's I'm definitely the fact that and like and buddies of mine are we have these conversations too. You know, I mean, if God forbid I always joke that God forbid anyone ever see a photographer's private message group, you know, talking about where's the next protest or where's the next thing that's going to light up, or being disappointed that, you know, there weren't more houses on fire or something like that when they got there. I mean, God.
Totally. And here's another thing, and this is what I found after a while, it was really disturbing, is that we basically spend all our waking hours preparing for, investigating, and arriving at places in the hopes of documenting tragedy. That's what we want. We don't want anything else. We don't want to show up to a war zone and have there not be any violence. That's like the worst thing, you know. And like, how is that? What kind of job is that, really?
Yeah.
You know.
No, there's a sick. I flew over to Kiev, and while I was in the air, peace broke out, and I can't say that I was overjoyed when I landed. That I had just spent, you know, working as a freelancer, completely unassigned, so it's all coming out of my paycheck. I mean, I hope I made some great images, that whatever, but yeah. It's a really horrible industry that we're in.
The paycheck in the industry doesn't even matter in a way. It's the culture, you know, because you could have been self-assigned, gone to this place, and gotten really dramatic pictures of violence and you know, all that kind of really, you know, cinematic drama.
Yeah.
Not made $1, but I guarantee you'd be happier in the pig and shit.
That was, you know, that was me for Ferguson. I actually missed the main riots, but I made some fantastic images, and I lost probably about $1,500 by going. But yeah, but I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, how much of that do you think is the fact that a lot? You know, my other journalism work. I work as an investigative researcher, and pays basically my photography bills, because that's what I enjoy doing more so. I mean, like, how much do you think is the fact that that's kind of, for a lot of photographers, that's kind of all we've got right now, is the fact that we enjoy our job, however sick it may be, which, I mean, I'll have an argument with any photographer who doesn't think our jobs are problematic.
Well, they're problematic. You know, I'm not even going to say it's sick. You know, I'm just saying that we're not honest with ourselves about why we're inspired to do it. Now, granted, there are definitely some people out there who are true believers, and I'm not trying to paint this brushstroke to cover everybody out there, but the majority of us, we do it because it's an exciting lifestyle. It's fascinating. There's probably, in my own case, I would consider my motivations much more anthropological than journalistic. I'm fascinated by violence. I'm fascinated why men like war. But it's not like I'm out there trying to like shift policy, because I don't want that burden over my head. That's a heavy thing to carry, because like I said, the door can swing both ways, and your work can become propaganda in an instant.
You know, Eros, I want to bring up something you mentioned earlier regarding the UK Prime Minister, who saw the image and said they made a decision based on that. You know, the refugee crisis has been going on for like 20 years or something like that. It's not a new topic, but I think it's been reignited by, you've seen these stories about boatfuls of people that, drown because the boats they're on are faulty. And then, of course, that image specifically of the boy who was dead on the shore or something like that. I'm not really exactly sure what the image is, but I know there was an image of a dead child that brought the story kind of right back into the limelight. And I don't disagree with what you're saying in that there's probably photojournalists out there who do the job for simply the rush that they get out of, like being in the war zone, getting the most dramatic image. But is that necessarily a bad thing? Is that, if it brings to light imagery that, again, people look at, and I don't think that necessarily the Prime Minister or whatever changed his mind because of the image. I think the image, or any imagery that's profound, develops a life of its own. You get people tweeting it, you get people reposting it, putting it on their Facebook page, and that creates a groundswell of kind of this social sort of interest in what's going on, which then affects the politicians, which then affects the decision makers. But going back to what I'm saying is, let's say that, like you said, these photojournalists, they're doing it purely of their own sort of internal motivation. They could, the actual subject matter isn't that important to them. It's the rush they get out of it. Is it so bad? Because in the end, we still get the imagery that, comes out of that sort of motivation. Is it bad that that's the motivation?
I'm not saying it's bad at all. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying the hypocrisy is bad. It's like, I'm just saying that just don't paint the myth so thick. But back to what you're saying about bringing this up, bringing the Syrian refugee crises, giving it new life. I mean, like I said, the wind blows both ways. I mean, there's a lot of intelligence analysts who think that's one of the primary causes of the Paris attacks and why they left a fake Syrian passport at the scene, is because they're like, wow, all these people are fleeing us and they're being accepted into these European countries. That's not good for our propaganda. So I mean, I think that there's a lot going on both sides, and I don't know a lot about that situation, but what I can tell you about is my experience in Mexico. Sure. Now, has my work done any good? Not that I can tell. Not that I can tell. Has anybody's work in Mexico done any good? Not that I can tell. The only thing that it's really done is it has the rest of the world thinking that that there's a bloodbath on every corner of Mexico, which is so far from the truth. I mean, statistically, El Salvador, Guatemala are far more bloody than Mexico. But Mexico gets all the attention as this really bad place, and you shouldn't go there. And
Honduras has the highest murder rate in the world.
Well, exactly. Well, it's the they call it the Northern Triangle: Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, right? Because they're all very interlinked. It probably should be one country. In any case, so that's one thing that I can be sure that my work has definitely helped to do, is kind of perpetuate this idea that the entirety of Mexico is just feasting in a bloodbath, which is just not true. So it's just there's such a lack of context in everything about journalism, and maybe I should have hesitated before I said it was not an important job, and really kind of say, like, I don't know how important of a job it is. I'm having my doubts, but what I can say is primarily I think that most, and here's a big one for you, most photojournalism basically boils down to entertainment. It's entertainment for smart people. And sure, it has value, but at the end of the day, it's a curiosity, I think. We look at pictures, we read articles, and we're like, huh, wow, and then we just go about our daily lives. So Not that it doesn't have value.
I get into this argument often with people especially when I'm on the ground in whatever town or in America that I'm in. They're like, "Why are you only here when bad shit's happening or bad whatever?" And I go, "Well, good news is not news for the most part. The fact
Everything went okay today. Front page, story 11.
And so it's this constant problem. And I believe me, I would love to. I was able. Al Jazeera for the first time in my life let me. They gave me a week's day rates to cover an investigative story that I actually worked on with journalist Greg Palast on voting theft, and I got to go into people's homes and photograph people who've been affected by something that's not a violent, thing, but really affects people's lives almost more so than really anything else I've ever photographed. The people that having their vote taken away, and I don't think if it wasn't for Al Jazeera having a good sum of money behind them, I don't think I'd ever be able to be covered. Those assignments are so unbelievably rare to be able to cover something that is really, really quiet. And so it's a bleed. If it bleeds, it leads sort of problem with kind of all the work that we do, especially, whether it be video or still or, anything visual. Which is it's because I'm constantly having this argument with the journalist Greg Palast that I work with a lot about where I'm going next on my freelance assignments, and he's always telling me go where no one else is, and I go, well, I would love to, but
hey, nobody's in North Dakota, the entire state. There's no one in there.
Unfortunately, I don't have the budget to sit in I'm trying to think of what country, Norway, and waiting for a story to come up or cover something, because no one's, at least I don't know who those editors are that are buying that work.
Eros, let me ask you this. You've been to Iraq, Afghanistan, you've been in the war zones over there. Have you ever interacted with any of the, combat photographers, public affairs, service members over there? What was your kind of experience working with them?
Combat camera in the military?
Yeah,
totally. I worked with a couple people. I worked with Stacy Pearsall in Iraq. She's a fantastic photographer. She's in the Air Force combat camera. And some of her colleagues that was in Bakuba, Iraq. And shoot, the last time I had, it was a heavy experience, man. I was in Afghanistan in the Pesh Valley. That's in the eastern mountains near Pakistan, and there was a combat camera. He was a soldier. I forget what unit he was with, but basically, him and I were on a ridgetop with a couple other American soldiers and a couple Afghan soldiers, and American helicopters were just strafing the hillsides all around. I mean, they're letting loose. 30 millimeter cannons, white phosphorus. They were going for it, and I gotten as many pictures as I thought I could make up there, and I scaled back down the hillside to go join the rest of the soldiers. And a new helicopter came in and mistook their position and lit them up 30 millimeter cannons, and that combat camera had both of his legs ripped off. And that was the last experience I had with the military cameraman. There, friendly fire, man. 30 millimeters, just intense. I remember looking at him. They're bringing him down on the stretcher, and I kind of looked at one side, and I was like, "Oh, he's cool. He's all right." And then I walked around the other side, and his leg was just a mangled mess of meat.
Oh man.
Yeah, man, it was bad. And I got to say one more thing about this, because I was up there on this hillside and we were relatively safe. There was some accurate fire, but it was, incoming accurate fire, small arms. But we were a good 300 meters away from the shooters and kind of just trading shots from one ravine to, one draw over to the next. And there was a moment when I was, trying to decide, should I stay up here? Probably, if I stay up here, something might happen. And like I kid you not, 10 minutes later, that's when that incoming Apache lit that position up. And thinking on it, my first reaction was like, "Oh my God!" And then I was thinking, "Gosh, I should have waited. I would have gotten the most dramatic pictures. Probably would be all over world press, man. Or I would have got my legs torn off." And it was kind of at that moment that I realized I did the right thing. Get your pictures. Don't stay too long. Split. Get your pictures and go.
It's funny you mentioned Stacy. She's actually a friend of mine. And she's no longer in the Air Force, but really good, great photographer, doing a lot of great stuff with First Combat Camera Squadron with the Air Force. But you mentioned sort of the war photography aspect, at least in what sort of the civilian photojournalists do, and that they're out there sort of to catch the excitement, catch the story, and try and get the most dramatic image. What do you think the combat photographers are out there doing? What are your thoughts on them sort of as a group, an entity? They're essentially doing the same job you are. They're camera, they're documenting, but they have a different purpose in terms of what they're doing. And you want to talk about, oh, well, nobody publishes good news. I think, the sort of the combat photographers, the war photojournalists from the military, they're the ones documenting all the good news, the good stuff that happens, which nobody cares about, nobody wants to know about. And that was especially prevalent throughout the entire Iraq, Afghanistan conflicts. Is essentially, they build a school, publish it, nobody would care.
Oh yeah, God forbid that a Western photographer takes pictures of the American military doing something constructive.
That doesn't sell.
Yeah, well, it's more than doesn't sell. It goes contrary to ideology of most journalists working in the field. Man, there's such a polarized kind of us against them mentality on both sides, on both the military side and on the civilian press side. It's just there's not a lot of trust there. But honestly, I talked to a lot of and I met a couple other ones too. I met a young Marine. I forget his name, but I met him in Anbar in Iraq, and a couple other guys. And and I think basically they want the same things that we do. They just have heavier sensors, and they can't keep the rights to their images. But when I was working with him, it was basically like the feeling I got was, if it gets too heavy, I got to stop taking pictures and start aiming my rifle down range. And there was kind of a like, damn, I'll miss out on making. My feeling is that they were at heart photojournalists, and they just had a uniform and a weapon. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's like, when do you put down the gun and actually have to pick up the weapon and shoot back? And I think, that's their, primary thing. It's like, you talk about Marines. Marines are riflemen first and then everything else second. So obviously they're there to document an image, but, you're the ones you guys don't have weapons. So you can't even shoot back if you want to. You're not legally allowed to carry weapons in a war zone, but, your job is just to document them doing what they're doing. And, again, that was...
Dude, I had a mean mini K-bar. What are you talking about? No
oh, okay. And your fists. You had your fists. So,
Right. I got 2 5s for you. No, my thing was always this. It's like, every time, that was the most common question by any soldier or Marine is like, you don't carry a weapon? And my answer was the classic, which is really true. And like, dude, if I really need one, there's going to be an extra one laying on the ground.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
A little dark.
Well, but it's true. I mean, shoot, God, who was it? It was one of the Vietnam era photographers had to pick up a rifle, and they were fighting to the last guy. I think it was. Oh my God, I can't. I'm blanking. I'm losing so many words and names now. I'm so embarrassed. Classic
okay.
English photographer from Vietnam, who their position was being overrun, and he had to fight. They were fighting for their lives. They were. It was pick up the rifle or die, basically.
I think
so it could happen.
Wasn't in the movie We Were Soldiers where the photojournalist has to pick up a rifle and shoot back, I believe. So there we go. That could be your situation.
Perhaps, but wasn't he combat? Wasn't he in the military? Wasn't that character supposed to?
I think he was just a civilian photographer who was covering the story, at least in the movie. I don't know if it's different in the book or the real life.
I'll tell you, it has happened, and it could happen again.
Oh, you have had to pick up a weapon.
No, not me. I said it has happened in the history of the profession.
Right.
Tim Page, that's who I'm thinking of. I'm almost certain it was Tim Page, and he writes about it in his book, page after page. It might have been, but yeah, there was a moment where their position was getting overrun, and they were like, "Hey, man, we need every swing and dick we can, get here." And he pick up an M16 and defend their position. I believe that was Tim Page.
Now, the link I'm going to include in the show notes links to the story from CNN about sort of your comments, which are actually on a video series called Conflict. By the way, beautiful shot, well shot series, or at least the one I saw of you. Just a lot of beautiful imagery telling the story, and honestly, when you talked about sort of you're back in the United States and things are a lot more complicated and you're having to see a therapist, all I could think of was that just screams PTSD. Have you been officially diagnosed with PTSD, or is that something that you can? Yeah.
Yeah, man, I got textbook symptoms.
How are you doing with that?
It goes off and on. I think it mostly kind of rears its head, and I get easily frustrated and easily angered.
Right.
But I'm not beating people up on the street anymore. I mean, ever
anymore.
Yeah, some other photojournalist crosses you the wrong way. You take that camera and beat him with it.
I've come close.
So the battery grip on the camera.
So you talked about kind of you want to revise what you said. Let's go kind of to the core issue. So, does photojournalism, does the act of taking pictures matter? Do pictures matter?
Does it matter to whom?
To the people, to the audience, to the people who look at pictures.
You mean to just whoever's picking up a magazine off the newsstand kind of thing? Getting the New York Times delivered to their door?
Well, I don't think actually people get magazines delivered to their door anymore. Well, they do, but I'm talking about the millennial who's browsing through pictures on Instagram or on Snapchat or their Facebook page. Does imagery matter to them? Does photojournalism matter to them?
I think more often than not, it does not.
Okay.
And I take no pleasure saying that. But I don't think it really matters. I think we're just overwhelmed with imagery now, and it's just kind of cheapened the whole experience.
And the truth is, I kind of agree with you in a matter of the fact that the average viewer doesn't care if the photograph being presented in front of them was shot with a cell phone by an amateur or with the Nikon D5 by a professional such as yourself. An image is an image is an image, and they're going to breeze through it in a tenth of a second before they go to the next image.
Hey, dude, I use Canon.
I'm with you, right, buddy? I'm right there with you, buddy. Canon 5D Mark II right here.
I have to be the Nikon, sole Nikon person? Okay.
I only said that because the D5 was recently, they showed some pictures of it. So that's as soon as Canon comes out, the Canon 5D Mark IV, I'm going to be on top of that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, I don't think, for the general viewer who takes a picture, what matters is it sensational. That's generally the only thing that's going to catch people's eye. And that's kind of part of my whole premise here is that the pictures that probably do matter are the ones that aren't sensational, but they're the ones that are presented in kind of long format. And I generally don't think that many people outside of the industry or outside of kind of human rights circles really give two winks about it.
Okay. And the other thing you mentioned, I want to make sure I clarify, is it's not so much that photography or photojournalism doesn't matter. It's more so that the people doing the job, or at least the ones who are well known for being in places where they're trying to do the job, it's not about the subject matter. It's about being in that sort of club of people who go around and just, want to get that osprey or that red feathered, cockatoo or whatever. It's about getting there, getting that stuff, and getting out. It doesn't, so that their ideals about what photojournalism mean is overblown. Or at least
I'll agree.
the
I'll
majority.
put my name on the last sentence there. I think that.
Or just clarify what I said. Clarify what I said in your own words. I just want to reiterate and make sure I got right.
Basically, what I'm saying is that we and our work aren't as important as we think it is.
Okay.
That's basically it. It's got value, of course it does. And remember, I don't fault anybody for having motivations that might sound unpure, because that was me, man. I was an adventurist. I started out very ideological. I was gonna show the world the the bad things, and I was gonna change the world through pictures, but
Eros, who you sound like right now throughout this whole thing, because I've talked to you a couple years ago or whatever it was now, and you sound really like Chuck Bowden. Just the way that he talks, especially towards the end of say Murder City or any number of his books. Charles Bowden, probably one of the best writers, investigative journalists of the Southwest ever to live. And unfortunately we lost him last year, but he wrote one of the, I don't know, would you say probably the best book on Juarez written?
He wrote a very interesting book on Juarez.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into the whole who's best thing, man.
Yeah, no, I know. I haven't read a lot of books on it, books, but like it's he absolutely amazing journalist who talks a lot about considers in his own work on kind of whether his own work is important or not, or whether it'll make a difference. And that's just the reason why it just you kind of have that going on right now, which is not necessarily bad.
There's just a lot of different reasons why things can be important or not. I mean, there's a historical aspect to consider as well. Posterity and whatnot, and having kind of pictures to remember things. I mean, it would suck if there were no pictures. I'll say that. But like that's not a reality. You know what I mean? Like. So now to this point where like there's too many pictures. There's just too many pictures.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic of the evening. BBC.com presented an article about slow photojournalism. So basically the rise of long-term assignments. We as visual journalists, we get into an area, we shoot something, we get out. We got to produce things on, sort of a quick time budget. Like you were mentioning earlier, you had a week to document something, but in the pantheon of what we do, that is extremely rare. But what have you worked on that was sort of like a long-term assignment? Have you been able to work on long-term assignments? What's some long-term assignments you worked on, if you did? And how were you able to support these long-term assignments? Because again, if you're coming from a newspaper background or a traditional photojournalism background, you go out, you shoot an assignment, you come back, you download your imagery or whatever, you process it, you develop it, and it's going on either the newspaper the next day or that, the broadcast that night or something like that, or on the website. So what are some long-term stuff you've been involved in, and how'd you support it?
I'd say most of the things that I've done have been long-term projects. Assignment is the wrong word, and I read that article on the BBC, and I didn't understand it, because at first they were talking about long-term assignment. Like, they're not assignments. That's called a personal project. I got paid to do a long-term assignment in Iraq. And I was working for the New York Times, and I went back I spent several months, and you could look at that all as a long-term assignment, just trying to wrap my head around all that stuff. Certainly the work in Mexico is a long-term project. That was, from I'd say 2005 to 2012. I worked a long-term project in Colombia in the kind of late 1990s, early 2000s. I wasn't getting paid for that. But how I make money somewhere else and use it to, fund my photojournalism vacation. That's basically what it was. In the early days, I'd just work whatever job. I mean, I worked I worked construction. I worked at restaurants. I worked, I worked in, I worked in this factory once, and my only job there was to take big rubber gaskets and fit them around plastic container tops, one after the next. Suffice it to say that only lasted 2 days.
What? I could have sworn that would have been a long-term career for you.
Yeah, that was a weird job, man. It was one of those temp, through a temp agency.
Right.
Where you go do something really stupid every other day. It's you make your money somewhere else because no one's going to really pay for you to do long-term assignments unless you're like utterly shit hot, super photojournalism rock star. And even then, these days, I doubt they would. So I really don't understand that article because they talk about the rise, the popularity. It's like it's always been popular. That's all it's really been, as far as I know. From the days of Life magazine, that's all that was, man. Every photographer I know has done long-term projects. Well, not every photographer. There's obviously, I would say probably most. I don't see this as a trend at all. I did not understand that article.
Zach?
Yeah, I've always I'm waiting for that $45,000 advance to come in so I can work on a long-term assignment. But even the grants that you can apply for that, because I've been looking for a couple because I really want to. I'd like to spend a year doing nothing but documenting the kind of the protest movement and kind of the people behind it. So I'm not just hopping from, shit that I can sell to my wire service, and also be able to not have to make those images that are going to, sell the idea that, it's all like the protest movement or whatever is all about riots or burning crap down. But, even the grants I'm looking at are like $25,000, which is for me, it would be a ton of money. But the idea of that helping pay for a year or even 6 months of traveling and doing kind of the work that you have to do, I don't know if that is that's even enough. So, my personal assignments, I spent. Usually been more in documentary film and with photography on the side. So I'm literally just I flew in 2010. I flew up to Alaska to cover the kind of the unspoken left politics of the state while Sarah Palin was a goddess there, or not there. She was hated in Alaska by 2010. Beloved in the rest of the lower 48. Ended up moving there in 2013 for a year. And speaking of side jobs, I had to work as one of the guys that show up at political events for a political action committee. Talk about the most soulless job I've ever had to work in my life. I think I'm on a non-disclosure agreement, so I won't mention which PAC I worked for. But that's the only way that I paid for my time in Alaska, and I'm still working on that project. I produced a small book off of it, and then a whole ton of articles and everything like that. But but yeah. So yeah, like I said, I'm still waiting for BBC to give me a call for my long-term assignments.
You mentioned grants and just basically working odd jobs to raise money to do long-term projects or personal projects, as you've called them as well. But I mean, is there anyone out there who's actually able to make a living off of long-term projects doing, that type, anyone you know of? I mean, you mentioned some rock stars, Eros. I mean, who is there? Anyone specific you can think of?
I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing that they just. I think the people that are making it financially as globe-trotting photojournalists are probably making most of their money off of doing corporate and advertising work, and they probably just pay their own way, or they get grant. I don't know. I mean, that's a whole mystery. Some people are just really, really, really good at kind of conning people into giving them money to go on some adventure with a camera, and more power to them, man. I don't know, man. I don't know, but I would assume that the real money is being made in kind of the commercial arena, and then the proceeds for that are used to sustain their offices and send them to go places on spec. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the magazines sure aren't paying, so I don't So I don't know what the hell the BBC is talking about, man.
every photographer they seem to mention in this article, by the way, is one guy is he did the work while for his master's degree, and some of the images were recently published in National Geographic. I'm sure that paid for going to the Arctic.
Oh yeah, and they mentioned Darcy Padilla. She's been working on that project with for like 20 years. I mean, it's not an assignment. She just went and did it. She went and did it.
It's a life. It's not like my Alaska project is my life, basically. Like, I spend half my time up there and my other half trying to figure out how to get back. So
in my personal fantasy world, I think of the rise of things like Kickstarter and Patreon and GoFundMe and all these other sort of crowdfunding sources. I have this picture in my mind of me going on there and being like, hey, I want to document this, and why don't you give me money to do that? And I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility, but I think, again, it'd be a limited amount of people who could actually solicit that kind of income, or at least the income necessary to actually cover something. But I think if you have a profound enough subject and can harness the power of social media, the power of crowdfunding and whatnot, like you said, there aren't a lot of institutions nowadays that are going to pay people to do this type of stuff. But I think if you got something that's, something people want to hear about, I think there's funding out there.
Man, I think it doesn't. All subjects are profound, man. It's more about what is politically advantageous to whatever group. If you can get on board with something that the Soros Foundation is head over heels for, then you're all good. But hey, if your area of interest doesn't align with theirs, you're not getting anywhere. So I think it has less to do with. I think it has less to do with the pictures and more to do with how good of a networker you are, and what kind of how well you can write your proposal. That's what it boils down to. Because I don't mean to sound like a dick, but I see some of these big grants going to fund these projects, and the projects are just like boring as all hell, but guess what? They were, outstanding grant writers or something.
So there's the key. Be a really good grant writer. And then
without it, that's it. No, that's it. Be a good grant writer. But, statistically speaking, you're far better off to just do a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I raised the money to complete my book. I raised, $16,000.
Really?
Kickstarter. Yep.
Wow.
To finish my book. And I could have spent. I gave up writing grant proposals like about 10 years ago. Well, not that long ago, but yeah, man, Kickstarter, people believe in you.
All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, that's great. So you actually have used it, and it has worked for you.
Yeah, it's kind of a one-trick pony, though. It's not like I could go do it again because I'd be asking all the same people, like, "Hey, man, I need some more money. It'll take me like 2 years longer than I said it would,
Yeah, tell me about it.
but I
I've been
need some
there.
more money."
Well, it's funny. You see these Kickstarter projects or any of these, online crowdfunding things, and they're like, "Hey, why don't you back what we're doing now, and then in a year or two you'll actually get the product, and then like a year after that is when you actually get it, because they don't care. Once they have your money, they don't care. They'll sort of go at their speed, to get whatever they want to you. So, I think you should try it out, Eros. I think
time.
if you have a cool thing, you should put it out there and see how. Say like, I want $25,000 for, and you'll get a photo book at the end of it, or something like that. I don't know. I would see you could probably do that. You have enough of a following.
Yeah, but
Zach or me, I don't know if we have that.
I did it already. The little thing is that I can't ever do it again.
You
It's right
can.
here. Maybe like in 10 years when everybody's forgotten that I've already sucked them for money. But
No, and I did one for my my Alaska film, my Alaska project, whatever that is.
You did a Kickstarter?
Yeah. I thought one of the problems is if you don't. I mean, I think Eros, you thought it through a lot better than I did. I did not really work out the budgets well enough.
dude, I didn't think anything through.
See, my problem was that one of the things they don't tell you is that even if you hit your goal, which I did a really minimal goal because I had an idea that I could turn this thing quick around in 3 months before an election and then just be out and whatever. And then I got there and then I found my topic that originally what I was going to do, which was going to be an expose on Sarah Palin. I got there and found out that no one gave a crap about her. No one wanted to talk about her. And then the subjects that I did talk to were way more interesting than anything that I could dig up about Sarah Palin. And I got some really, really fun stuff about Palin that literally has never been out. Like, it's just out. But who cares? Like, it's not something, it's all personal stuff. It's, it's like the, the backroom stories that, people tell. But, no, but what I found a more interesting and also more rewarding, personally rewarding project, which is, featuring the people that are that are fighting, fighting the right wing, fighting the massive oil companies from turning Alaska into just a resource colony, or more of a resource colony. And that's a story I've been telling for a year. I mean, I write for the Mud Flats, which is the basically the major Alaska political blog up there. But the secret thing that they don't tell you about the Kickstarters is that even if you hit your goal, people don't have to pay you. I raised $5,300, which was just a minimal, like, I need to get up there and back or whatever, buy one piece of equipment type of thing. And I ended up walking away with $4,100. So, which was, since I cut my goal so close to what I needed, that was a big kick in the balls.
I see.
Well, you got to pay like X amount of % just to use their service. I know that.
Yeah.
I raised $18,000, but I ended up pocketing like $16,000, and then I had to pay tax on the $16,000. But I couldn't use the deductions from the sale of the books because, well, that happened, a couple of years later.
Exactly. Yeah. So we could probably do a whole podcast just about like horrible, the back room, how exactly a Kickstarter actually works.
Yeah, but you know what? It's cool, dude. I think
it's
Kickstarter is pretty rad, and of course they got to make their money. They're facilitating it all. They have a brand, so it's like, hey, I'm on Kickstarter. Everyone knows what that is, so it's cool.
Oh no, and it's super easy. The fact that you can just pay through Amazon. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I'm 100% sure that.
Oh yeah, well that's
half
like
my
5%
donors,
of your money goes to.
Literally, like it's already there. It's one-click purchase. There doesn't have to be a question, and then your money just kind of disappears from your bank account. So it's no, I mean, I've had friends of mine do Indiegogo, which is similar platform, and not have the same amount of luck because it's not built into your Amazon account. You know, like the way that everything else, you have to enter a credit card in or whatever.
Oh, dude, I don't do anything without Amazon. I don't even have to go to the store anymore. It's awesome.
I did all my Christmas shopping on Amazon.
Hell yeah, dude! Amazon Prime. I wish I bought stock in that stuff, man, because that's just rocks. Don't have to see anybody.
But yeah, you know, a lot of different funding resources out there. But yeah, obviously the days when you'd have a magazine like Life or whatever, you know, back you up so you could do 6 months to a year covering a story are, of course, way long gone. In my personal experience, any long-term projects I've ever worked on, they were always stuff I did on the side in my own time and were never compensated for. So, yeah, I can see exactly where you're coming from on that, Eros. Hard to find or convince a sort of investor or someone with a financial stake in you that you're going to be able to turn whatever you're working on into something that's financially viable. So, yeah, most of the times it's a pet project, personal project you're just doing on your own.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's doable. You just have to go outside of the kind of traditional players. You know, Time Magazine isn't going to give it to you, man. You got to go to I don't know who, man, but you know, not the journalism outlets. That's for sure. It's got to be someone else, some other entity with deeper pockets and.
Well, I mean, you talk about like corporate sponsorship, essentially. Sponsored content. That'd probably be, you know, your best chance.
Or, you know, making deals with foundations where they can, you know, use the work for what, you know, they need to do. I don't know. You got to be a businessman to do it, you know. And then that's the thing. There's I think so few people that are attracted to that kind of nomadic lifestyle are really savvy enough to kind of make things happen. At least I'm speaking for myself, but there's definitely some people that are awesome at getting money to do cool stuff.
Definitely. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. There was an award, 3 awards actually, to honor exemplary women journalists. The International Women's Media Foundation is seeking nominations for awards for their Courage in Photojournalism Award, Courage in Journalism Award, Lifetime Achievement Award. You know, this field, I think, more so than others, is really populated with a pretty healthy amount of women doing the job. And, you know, I've seen my fair share of really highly qualified female photojournalists, visual journalists. Eros, you mentioned one, Stacey Pearsall, really great visual journalist, you know, award-winning military photojournalist, and also doing great things as a civilian. From your two, you know, Zach and Eros, have you worked with any particularly noteworthy female journalists, visual journalists? You know, do you think any of them might be right for this award? And, you know, how do you think we as, you know, men and women cover stories differently?
I don't know, man. I work alone. Yeah. I'm sure all of the women photographers I know are right for that award, depending on what project they have in mind. Any of them can do it. You know, it's just about the project and how they're going to execute it. I honestly, I'm pretty out of the loop. These days. I don't really know who's doing what. I don't really care, just being frank about it. So to be even more specific about the gentler gender, I don't know, man. I don't know. How do we work differently?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure that you need to make that distinction based on gender. I think that every photographer works differently from someone else. I mean, there are definitely certain advantages that men have in certain circumstances and certain advantages that women have. I don't know. I think that maybe it becomes, I would say maybe it becomes more of a gender issue just when it comes time to get paid. But in terms of the actual work, I think that there's enough men that do the job completely different from other men, and enough women that probably do the job completely different from other women that I can't really, imagine. I wouldn't know where to start on that one. And plus, man, that is just way too touchy for me to get into.
Zach?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've had some really fantastic. I can think of Youngie Kim would be fantastic. She's probably, if she hasn't won the award already, I mean, Julie Dermansky, who we had on the show before, working out of New Orleans, is fantastic. But I don't. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever really noticed a difference. Obviously, again, there's I think women often, at least in the States, they definitely have they can have kind of a better chance of getting interaction, somebody to pose for a photo or interaction, that sort of thing. A little less, especially street photography kind of world.
A little less threatening, huh?
Yeah. I mean, me showing up in a camera, shoving your face is different than a woman doing it. Just general it is. I mean, like, I know I react if I'm speaking somewhere or doing something like that. If a woman's coming up to me, oh God, I'm sorry. It would be my girlfriend will kill me if I don't mention her. Jenna Pope would be a good. She's not a photojournalist. She's a photographer.
Dude,
she works in the activist world. She doesn't call herself a journalist. She works more in the activist world. She's also a person who successfully actually funded herself for a while using crowdfunding. She has a crazy social media following that she built up over the years by going to covering Occupy, covering Madison, and going to Turkey, getting some scary stuff there. But yeah, I don't know. Work alongside a lot of women photographers. I don't know if we really work any different.
Yeah, I mean, they do all the same stuff that's right as men do, and they all do all the same stuff that's wrong that men do in the field. I mean, it's I really don't, I think it depends just more on the person. There's people out there that have their own methods of doing things, and I don't see the division based on gender so much as more on just personality.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I don't think there is, like, I can't look at necessarily a picture and be like, oh, that was shot by a woman, or oh, that's definitely shot by a guy. And that's, I think, one of the beauties of our career field is that the result, the product you have doesn't necessarily have the signature of a gender. It has the signature of the actual person who does it. I think there's a lot of great work out there, especially the people I work with, and they have their specific style. And I can definitely tell, oh, that's definitely a shot by that person, but that's only because they as an individual crafted their style, developed it, honed it, and that it comes across as like, oh, that's a signature shot. But yeah, female, male, I would say the only difference is I've seen, or that I know of in terms of how they work, is really their access to subject matter. And that a female photojournalist is going to have easier access to subject matter that relates more to women, because it's just that barrier to entry is much lower. A female group, or woman who's pregnant, or someone who's going through female issues is far more likely to invite a female photojournalist to come cover that story. And the only other difference really would be a physical one. And in terms of stamina and being able to keep up with a subject and keep up with certain aspects, for instance, wartime photography. But again, I've seen females out there, males out there.
Every female photographer I know can kick my ass out on the street running along with
good
gear. So
it's because you don't jog enough, dude.
Yeah, no, I do not. No, don't.
You gotta get your cardio on, man.
It's my usual weeks of working as working in front of a computer doing research and stuff like that. You just junk out, and then yeah, I don't I don't during the Occupy protests, I could probably run like a 8 minute or 7-8 minute mile, but since then it hasn't been that good. This actually does bring. I got to see a fantastic documentary a couple weeks ago called Frame by Frame.
Yeah,
it's by
Afghanistan
Alexandria Bombeck. Yeah, I think we talked about it. And it actually delves really, really fantastically into a female photographer in Afghanistan, photojournalist in Afghanistan, who got to basically and kind of showed the different access that she got than actually her husband, who's also a fantastic photographer as well. Yeah, and I think it should be out in theaters soon, if not out in like on demand and stuff like that.
It's really doing a very slow burn of showings throughout the country. So it's coming out very slowly. But if you go to the website, all about it, they're showing where they're listing that. But it's funny you mentioned that, because there's another photojournalist who I'm trying to recall their name, female, working in Afghanistan, and her subject matter was all just women of Afghanistan, and she would never have gotten that kind of access if she weren't a woman, and that's just, the nature of the beast sometimes.
True that.
All right, well, let's move on to our final topic of the night. When I was trying to find stuff to talk about this week, one of my thoughts was, well, we only started this show like 2 months ago, and there's obviously been a whole world of stories that were covered or talked about this year. So I was trying to think, like, maybe I do like a retrospective of stories that came out. But, when I started to look at it, and the stuff that really affects us is kind of the layoffs, or, not us specifically, but, just I would say the shrinking of our career field as a viable means to, be like a career. And so I was, looking at stories about, Sports Illustrated and National Geographic cutting back or completely eliminating like their staff positions. And then I started doing digging, and there was the Sun Times photojournalists, the 28 Sun Times photojournalists that were laid off a few years ago. And it all seems to point to sort of the growing trend that I think will continue in 2016 of the end of really sort of like staff photographers, staffers, or this concept or notion that, there are staffers, staff photographers, staff journalists, photojournalists on a newspaper, or magazine, or website, or whatnot, and that the entire career field is going through what I call freelancification, if you will, wherein basically they're just fire all the staffers, rehire them as freelancers, and they're trying to save money. So, I mean, obviously, Eros, you mentioned you're not really doing the photojournalism work full time anymore, but what are your thoughts on sort of this notion or this idea? Is it valid, or is it is it the way we're going?
Well, it's valid for the paymasters, because now they don't have to pay benefits. Hire your staffers back as freelancers, give them a shitty contract, and now you don't have to pay health insurance. It's totally valid for them. I think it's too bad. But honestly, I'm to the point where I just don't care, man. I mean, one, I've never been a staffer. I've never wanted to be a staffer. But I mean, the state of the news industry as a whole, I think, is pretty bleak. There's tons of stuff out there, but honestly, my bigger concern, rather than laying off staff photographers, is just the lack of serious, in-depth investigative reporting that the news industry is financing. In my opinion, that's like really the only part of the whole puzzle that really that's really worth a damn. That's some true public interest stuff, like news reporting on the daily stuff, like, all right, but I'm much more concerned with the lack of good investigative pieces being done anywhere. I think, it sucks. It sucks for the people that are that still love their jobs as a staff photographer, because believe me, there's plenty of staff photographers out there that are lazy sacks, man, and they're just hanging on, just making weak ass pictures, day after day. Like, it's like an old teacher, it's just like bitter and like, get them out of there, get someone in there who's passionate about it. But yeah, no, it's pretty sorry. I think. What can you say, man? I mean, how many companies control all the media in the United States of America? I mean, what is it, like 6 or something like that?
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, I don't know, man. This raises like more serious questions about the validity of our democracy as a whole. Like, you know what I mean? Like, basically, we're just living in the corporate-funded oligarchy. So it just doesn't surprise me that corporate interests are protecting their own by dismantling their news desks.
What I'm finding, because I mean I entered this field 10 years ago, kind of literally on its spiral downward, thanks to the internet and anything else. But what I'm really finding, and I completely agree with you, believe me, as a part-time investigative journalist and researcher, I agree with you on the lack of investigative journalist stories, especially the funding for that too. But for me, it's, I mean, obviously I would love to have a full-time job just doing this and just taking pictures for a living. That would be nice. But the fact that the only time I've ever worked with a photo editor, in my actual photo editor, a person who knows what he's doing, and that's his job, not an art director, not my reporter, was the time I worked for Al Jazeera. Every other time it's with somebody who just bought my photo off my wire, or at the Village Voice. Loved working for him, but they have an art director, the guy that gets the art for the front cover, works with the layout, and does everything else, and then photo. Okay, so I need photos too for the web or for the whatever, and nobody. I've never had that time period where I actually get to develop a story with one person who's really concerned with it on a journalistic level. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with, because I mean, we can argue for higher pay as freelancers. I mean, I personally don't like that movement, but I think that's where the entire, Silicon Valley has moved us there. And the fact that everything from taxi drivers to Amazon to the way we buy every single thing and work, it's now an app, and we got to figure out how to basically finance it. And I guess I don't know how to fight that. I mean, I think it's already there, and we're screwed, especially since this, my generation and kind of younger, we've all decided that we're okay with it. We're okay with no unions, and we're okay with no actual workers' rights, and maybe we'll fight for $15 an hour wage or something like that for minimum. But the idea that we're gonna actually work together is it's solid worker solidarity. Anyway, but
I think it's funny you mentioned fighting for more money as a freelancer. And then, of course, I see your imagery on that whole fighting for 15 or whatever the movement is. I'm like, you're not going to be out there, right, with your pitch, with your
all I
picket
can
sign?
say is the best paycheck I've gotten in probably since working for Al Jazeera was working for the Fight for 15 movement. They hired me. They gave me a day rate, and it was fantastic. I had a ball shooting it. It was fun as all get out, and they paid me well. They didn't. The great thing is they knew exactly how I was shooting it, how I was going to shoot it, and they didn't say, "Oh, well, we need whatever." They just I sent them my images, and it was great. So. I'm fine with. But that's like nonprofit work, basically like whether you're shooting for Human Rights Watch or whatever. The Fight for 15 job was basically a nonprofit job. So,
But
Um,
so neither of you have ever been staffers, right? It's like Zach, you said you've avoided that whole concept, and you know.
I haven't.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Zach. You're Eros. You've avoided the concept of being a staffer.
I'm
Zach,
applying for a job in Detroit right now. Actually,
Zach, I'm sure you'd love to be a staffer.
Yeah, that was never. I'm not what you would call a company man. I can't get a job with that whole thing. But it was interesting what Zach you said about working hand in hand with an editor. I think really the last time that I really did that, where you kind of daily check-ins and you're talking about the pictures was about this time last year with a woman named Sherry Bruckbacher at National Geographic. And that was a really nice experience. And she just got laid off. She lost her job a couple months ago, I think, after the Murdoch takeover in Nat Geo, and I was like, it's stupid.
And there's been a lot of great articles written about how the fact that photographers, most other journalists they work their way up. The guy that started at some low level Metro job could usually ends up becoming the editor of the Metro section or the editor of the whole paper. Mm-hmm. There's almost no one, not a single photojournalist that I read 2 or 3 articles discussing this topic on Poitner and other places, talking about the fact that no one from the photojournalism industry part of the paper has ever moved up to become an editor-in-chief. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's one of the problems why, number one, we're the first staffers to go. And number 2, the appreciation of our work is on the lowest end, because I think that they've always just, writers a lot of times see us as expensive, darlings that are killing their word count. So with expensive equipment, and I've worked with a lot of fantastic writers hand in hand, convincing them that my photos are going to take up either some of their pay. Because they pit us, the editor, higher ups, and they always make sure they pit us against each other on who's going to get assignments and who's going to get pay, and they don't like us talking about it. Luckily I've got a bunch of friends in New York where we actually were able to talk up. A few of us had a one clip that Fox News wanted of Black Lives Matter marching through Macy's, and Fox News was emailing both of us as we're walking down the street covering a protest, and we're talking to each other going, "Hey, so what do you offer? You offered $500 for the clip, for this 25-second long clip. Okay, I'll offer $525. If you get it first, then okay, then I'll talk them down and go lower." And so we literally negotiated Fox News up for a 30-second clip of a bunch of people protesting marchers. My buddy got $500. Unfortunately, they never called me back because I stayed up at $400, and they obviously weren't going to pay basically end with $1,000 for a freaking news segment. But I think that's unfortunately that's going to have to be the future. Is we're going to have to figure out how to talk to each other.
Look, man, it's not just our industry, man. Yeah. It's all across the board. It's the future is freelance, and if you don't figure out how to take advantage of that, you're gonna fall behind.
Definitely, I think the internet itself, it feels like we're just a conglomerate of freelancers who are working together to try and make a living.
Working together.
Yeah. Working together, working separately. Let's unionize our freelancing.
Hey,
Union of Freelancers. All right, so normally at this point in the show, we go to our picks of the week. Again, these are picks that we have chosen in the world of visual journalism. But before we do that, I have a bonus topic that nobody here is prepped with, and it's only because Eros, you and I talked about this, and I want to get your opinion on it real quick. You have said that you are interested in fiction, so fiction like filmmaking, being able to tell a story. I'd like you to kind of tell the audience kind of what you told me about that, what your drive is, moving from, because we're all so used to news and nonfiction, but you're looking at fiction as sort of this future place where you want to go.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that if done well, fiction, whether it be in novel form or cinema or whatever, is a fantastic way to really get at the heart of the matter of your own truth. And when specifically, I'm talking about cinema, I think that, there's not very many movies out there, but the few that are really, really powerful and really done well just enlighten me in so many ways all at once, in a way that kind of a news article or any kind of piece of documentary work never does. It's just the freedom that you have of really kind of delving in deep to many levels of separate truths, meaning that, it's such a subjective idea, because we all have our own truths, and I think that good cinema, or good, a good novel for that matter, you have the freedom to really get at so many different layers of nuance. And this, I got turned on by this. I guess I suppose I had somewhat of an epiphany watching a film called Eli. It's spelled Heli. It's a Mexican film by Amat Escalante. And it's basically a drug war tale in northern central Mexico that just blew me away, man. It felt like a documentary, but this is narrative, with actors and everything. And I was just tripping on that movie for so long, and how everything that I've done as a journalist, it doesn't come close to the experience and the thought-provoking kind of anxiety that this film gave me. And it was kind of at that moment that I knew I really wanted to explore scripted narrative cinema. Basically, you're telling the same stories, but you're just telling them in a different way, and I think that you just have so much more potential for that deeper emotional impact to leave people really kind of thinking about and considering new ideas. And that's what really interests me right now. So that's definitely the one of the directions I'm headed in. I can't say that I'll never do straight documentary work. I certainly might. I might change my whole program and get back into it. But at this, it's just another form of storytelling, and the stories that I want to tell just cannot be captured in the real world with a camera. They have to be kind of dreamed up and sifted through history and sculpted through a team effort. There's just so many more tools available.
Is that something that you're currently pursuing? Are you talking to people or writing something, or do you have something going that is going to be later on down the line, or is it just sort of the formative phases right now?
I would say both of the above. I'm certainly talking to people, but lately I've been working as a stills photographer on movie sets, and I've done 2 movies. I've gotten to work with 2 outstanding directors, both Michael Mann and Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, on his latest movie, The Revenant. I worked a couple of weeks for him doing stills. And they don't know it yet, but pretty soon, I'm also making some shorts, some scripted shorts that take place in northern Mexico. And so, I'm in definitely a formative time, but I'm jumping in with both feet. So at some point, I would like to get further in, at least into the cinematography world, but at this stage, I'm writing, directing, producing these tiny little short films that are still a ways off, because everyone that's involved is working on a volunteer basis. So I got to catch them when they got free time. But yeah, I'm in the editing stage of a 15-minute short that I shot earlier this year in northern Mexico.
Cool.
And it's really exciting. Yeah, it's really fun.
Great. We look forward to checking that out. There's a guy you might want to talk to, a guy named Vincent Laforet. Have you heard of him?
I know Vince.
Yeah.
I know. I talk to him from time to time. I pick his ear apart, just like, dude, well, what about this? And what do you do when you that and this? And he's super cool, man, because, I know Vince for quite a while. He was in fact, my team leader at the Eddie Adams workshop in I would say, what was it, 2004 or so?
Okay.
And And it was funny too, because at that whole thing, he was kind of tripping on me. He's like, there's a lot more than doing war photography. And at that stage, Vince was still a staff photographer for the New York Times. So yeah, man. I mean, I'm just kind of obsessed with filmmaking right now. I want to make movies, not necessarily as like a career, in terms of getting paid, but just doing it to do it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's go on to our picks of the week. I usually start, but you know what, Zach, you get to start.
I came across this great image, which I'm now trying to find. It is the basically Eyewitness Guardian Agency Photographer of the Year, Yanis Barakis, probably pronouncing his name wrong. It's a fantastic photo of a dinghy overcrowded with Syrian refugees drifting in the Aegean Sea at sunrise. And it's just it's a gorgeous image. The boat's silhouetted, and the sun is a bright red. And it's one of those images that kind of when photojournalism crosses kind of into the art world, where I think that you probably could frame this and put this up at the Gagosian Art Gallery or something. Mm-hmm. Which whether or not that's a good or bad thing, you can argue. But I don't know. I mean, I think it with a caption, it speaks to in a different way than most of the refugee stories or photo stories you see. It's a much quieter image. So
okay,
huge fan.
I'm gonna throw out this. I had one earlier from Time, but I'm kind of disgruntled at Time because of their recent contract changes. So I'm going to throw this link out there.
Yeah, but the photographer is probably a freelancer, man. So
Man, like I said, I just got $3, I think, for an image that they bought through my wire. So
woo, $3.
Yeah,
damn, don't spend that all in one place.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to throw out a link to this brightside.me article, 100 Best Photographs Without Photoshop. And I know it sounds kind of like something your grandma would share with you in a chain email, but the images are really spectacular. I mean, especially if you're a photographer who's wants to see some really good pictorial imagery or has questions about what's a good pictorial photograph. There's some really beautiful pictorial images in this set. So I'm going to throw that out there. I think it's pretty cool. And Eros, you got anything for us you'd like to recommend? If not, I'm going to throw out the link to the Heli film.
Oh, I think that's what you should definitely do. HELI, man. It really offers some really potent insights into this, the struggles in northern Mexico, central Mexico. I highly recommend it.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. All right, well, this is the time where we get to throw out our plugs. Eros, you get to go first, buddy.
Our plugs?
Yeah, man. Where do you want people to go to find more about you?
Well, you can go to eroshoagland.com. That's my website. And you can look at my pictures there. And you can also order my photographic book on the Mexican border entitled Reckoning at the Frontier. There is a link there. It's I got a bunch of them here in my house here, and I'm looking to unload them.
All right. Well, Christmas, it's only a few more days away, but there's a chance if you order it right now, which will be tomorrow when I actually post this, and you get express shipping from Eros' house. If you pay enough, Eros will hand deliver it. Right?
Well, I'll get it to you at least in time for Easter.
Do you sign the copies of the book? Because I know a lot of people do that. For an extra $5, they sign them.
Nah, dude, I don't charge extra for that.
All right, so if you want your copy of his book signed, all you gotta do is ask.
That's right, and I'll sign. I'll inscribe it, man.
Great. Zach, I know your plugs, but you go ahead and.
Yeah. Well, I also will, since I own a copy, I also will plug Reckoning at the Frontier. But you can find my work basically anywhere. zdroberts.com on Twitter, on Facebook. It's all ZD Roberts.
Great. And again, same with me. You can find everything related to me at DJM Photo. Main source is djmphoto.com, where you can find this podcast as well as my blog and my work and all that good stuff. Twitter, DJM Photo, of course. Facebook, all that good stuff. Reach out to me. Let me know what you think of the show, suggestions, emails, your thoughts. It's been a good year so far for the show. This will be the last show of the year. We're taking next week off, but I just want to say thank you to all the people who've subscribed this year. We started out with nothing, and we're a little bit more than nothing now. Around the area of, I'll be honest, about 50 subscribers or so. For those of you who are listening, really appreciate your patronage. Please tell people about the show if you think it's worthwhile for them to listen to. And really looking forward to an awesome next year with awesome panelists, awesome topics, and more great in-depth discussion about everything related to visual journalism. All right. So again, thank you all for listening. Eros, thank you for being our panelist for tonight. Zach, thank you for, as always, being a great co-host. My name is David J. Murphy, and we are out.